It always seems like the strongest people end up facing the toughest battles. Martin Peters, one of the smartest and most gifted players of his time, was no exception. Tragically, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, a cruel disease that eventually took the football legend away from us. But while the world lost a true great, his brilliance on the pitch continues to inspire generations of players and fans alike. His impact on the game can never be replaced, and his legacy will forever be remembered. Peters was a player whose talent transcended the boundaries of a traditional football role. His versatility on the pitch was extraordinary, making him one of the most valuable assets in any team he played for. He was a player who could seamlessly slot into almost any position, adapting his game to suit the needs of his team. In fact, he was so adaptable that he once filled in as a goalkeeper for West Ham, showcasing his ability to rise to any challenge. His footballing intelligence was remarkable, and this is something that didn't go unnoticed by his manager, Sir Alf Ramsey. Ramsey, who led England to glory in the 1966 World Cup, once described Peters as 10 years ahead of his time. This wasn't just a throwaway compliment, it was an acknowledgement of Peters' rare and exceptional understanding of the game. He was known for his ability to read the flow of a match, making him an invaluable player in any tactical setup. Peters had an innate ability to position himself in the right place at the right time, something that made him an effective force in both defensive and attacking situations. His awareness of the game allowed him to make decisions quickly and with precision, a skill that is hard to teach and even harder to master. What set Peters apart from many of his contemporaries was his incredible ability to find space. It might sound simple, but in football, the ability to drift into areas where opponents struggle to track you is a game changer. He had that ability in abundance. He seemed to have an almost supernatural sense of when and where to move, often finding himself in positions that led to scoring chances or providing assists for teammates. This intelligence allowed him to be a consistent and dangerous threat, whether he was playing in the midfield, as a forward, or even in defensive situations. But it wasn't just his ability to read the game that made him stand out. He was also a remarkably effective goal scorer, despite being known primarily as a midfielder. He had a rare talent for scoring crucial goals, and perhaps his most famous strike came during the 1966 World Cup final. As England triumphed over West Germany in one of the most dramatic matches in football history, it was Peters who scored a vital goal to put his team ahead. The goal was more than just a typical World Cup moment. It was a perfect example of his ability to make an impact when it mattered most. What was particularly striking about Peters was his talent for scoring goals that no one saw coming. This earned him the nickname the Ghost. It wasn't because he was elusive in a physical sense, but because of his incredible ability to slip into goal-scoring positions unnoticed. Opponents simply couldn't track him, as he had an uncanny way of drifting into the right spots without anyone realising it. This made him an almost invisible threat, one that would strike out of nowhere and leave defenders helpless. His calmness and composure in front of goal only added to his reputation as a clinical and effective finisher. But even the sharpest players aren't untouchable. In 2016, the heartbreaking news came out that Peters had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Sadly, on December 21, 2019, he passed away at the age of 76, leaving behind a legacy that will never fade. His former clubs, including West Ham, Tottenham Hotspur, and Norwich City, along with many others, paid tribute to the legendary player, remembering the incredible impact he had on the game. Then, in September 2021, West Ham honoured him in a truly special way. His ashes were laid to rest in a foundation stone at the London Stadium, ensuring his legacy would always be a part of the club he once called home. And though he's no longer with us, his journey to greatness will always inspire generations to come. He was born in Egham Road on Monday, November 8, 1943, right in the middle of the Second World War. It was a challenging time, but little did anyone know that this boy, born into such turbulent circumstances, would go on to become one of the brightest stars in English football history. When he was 7 years old, the family moved to Dagenham, where Martin went to the local Fanshawe school. It was there that he began showing his talent for football. Although his main position in school football was as a centre-half, he was also known to play as a full-back. His skills on the field soon attracted the attention of some of the biggest clubs in England, including Fulham, Arsenal, Tottenham Hotspur, and Chelsea. Interestingly, Peters didn't have a strong allegiance to any one club growing up, but he did have a close friend, Terry Venables, who had signed for Chelsea. As a result, Martin was keen on joining Chelsea, but fate had other plans. In the summer of 1959, at just 15 years old, Peters was signed as an apprentice by West Ham, marking the beginning of his professional career. By November 1960, just over a year later, he signed his first professional contract with the club. Despite playing in various positions during his early years at West Ham, Peters' talent quickly shone through, and in 1962 he made his debut in a 4-1 win against Cardiff City on Good Friday. That same year, Peters had an unusual but memorable moment when he was called on to play as goalkeeper in a match against Cardiff after the regular goalkeeper, Brian Rhodes, was injured. Although it was an unusual request, Peters stepped up to the challenge and proved his adaptability, something that would become a hallmark of his career. Although his first season at West Ham was limited to just 5 appearances, things changed rapidly in the 1963-64 season. Peters became a regular in the first team, playing 32 league games, although he wasn't selected for the FA Cup final that year. West Ham won the final, beating Preston North End 3-2, but Peters had to watch from the sidelines. His breakthrough season came in 1965-66 when he was pivotal in West Ham's victory in the European Cup Winners' Cup, beating 1-8-6-0 Munich in the final. As his career progressed, Peters continued to show his value to West Ham. In the 1966 League Cup final, he played both legs against West Bromwich Albion, scoring in the second match, but West Ham lost the tie 5-3 on aggregate. However, the following season, Peters had his most prolific period, scoring 24 goals in 48 games. One of his most memorable performances came in the 1968-69 season, when he scored his only ever hat-trick for West Ham in a 4-0 win against West Bromwich Albion. In March 1970, West Ham agreed to sell him to Tottenham Hotspur for a then-record £200,000. Peters wasted no time making an impact at White Hart Lane, scoring on his debut against Coventry City in March 1970. During his time at Spurs, Peters enjoyed significant success, winning his first major domestic trophy, the League Cup, in 1971 when Spurs defeated Aston Villa 2-0. In 1972, he was part of the team that triumphed in the UEFA Cup, beating Wolverhampton Wanderers 3-2 on aggregate. Peters' leadership qualities shone through when he became club captain after Alan Mullery's departure in 1972. In 1973, he led Spurs to another League Cup victory, this time against Norwich City. In 1975, Peters moved to Norwich City for £40,000, helping them secure First Division status. He later earned an MBE, played in Australia, and became Sheffield United's manager in 1980. He also had an incredible international career. In May 1966, he made his England debut against Yugoslavia at Wembley. England won 2-0, and Peters impressed on his first outing, nearly scoring twice while also creating chances for teammates like Jimmy Greaves. His performance earned him a place in England's squad for the 1966 World Cup. During the warm-up games, Peters scored his first international goal against Finland, solidifying his spot on the team. Though Peters didn't play in England's first group game against Uruguay, he was called up for the next match against Mexico, which England won 2-0. As the tournament progressed, Peters played a crucial role in England's victory, contributing a key cross that set up Geoff Hurst's header in the quarter-finals against Argentina. In the final, Peters scored a pivotal half-volley that helped England secure their 4-2 win over West Germany, marking the beginning of his legendary international career. Peters continued to be an integral part of the England squad through the 1970 World Cup, but faced some disappointments in later years, including missing out on the 1974 World Cup after a critical draw with Poland. By the time he was 30, Peters' international career was winding down, though he still earned 67 caps for his country. Peters' transition into management came swiftly after his playing days, with his final match taking place on January 17, 1981, against Gillingham. Due to Harry Haslam's illness, Peters stepped up, but the team was already in decline, and despite his efforts, Sheffield United suffered relegation to the 4th Division for the first time in history. He resigned shortly after. Peters retired with an impressive 882 appearances and 220 goals to his name. After leaving Sheffield United, he briefly played for Gorleston before retiring completely. Peters passed away in December 2019 at 76. Having battled Alzheimer's. His legacy lives on in tributes from the clubs he loved. And that's a wrap for today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an update. See you next time. Bye.